Hello, everyone. Let me see if I got the mic on. Yes, I'm by myself, so I usually screw that up for the first couple of tries. Mic on. I was using my whole image on mirror my camera or something, and so I've probably been going backwards with everything instead of forward, but we'll work these things out if we could just have some more tech people that were interested in what's up with love. We will. It'll happen. It's going to start growing at an exponential rate. Guaranteed soon. Now, I'm just looking down here because I've got to figure out where I'm going here. It's the 20th of February. Yesterday we did a short podcast. Today I'll try to do one even maybe shorter. I'm trying to make these briefer. On the personality of love, which is the Christ consciousness. It's a perfect personality, which means it has perfect mind, perfect emotional condition, and perfect physical, which comes out of a higher level of perfect mental, perfect love, and perfect will, which comes out of a higher level of perfect spirit. So, which comes out of a higher level of perfect life. So, this comes down to us courtesy of Christ itself as a conscious being who took residence with the human race in our culture. Now, this residence, which wasn't well received at the beginning, is starting to become recognized as something that, while it was way in advance of what we would normally have expected to happen, God coming to earth to join you as a human being and go shopping with you, it's still true. And as we settle down a couple thousand years later and start to realize I could maybe take some positive advantage of this situation and develop a relationship here with something that would be normally maybe, I don't know, how far in advance for a human being? How far does a human being have to evolve before this opening into that perfect relationship could be possible for us? I have no idea. But we don't have to concern ourselves with that now because the impossible happened. So that corresponds to the human personality, which has been developing over millions of years, of animal man becoming human man, becoming this man today, and looking towards this personality nature. But our own personality nature up to now has been doing all right compared to the time limit we've been working on it and the difficulties we've had to overcome. So we have a limited physical perfection, obviously, but take a look at how humanity has been changing its shape, physical condition, its glandular development, its blood development, its brain development, nervous system, over all these centuries. Some people might think that Neanderthal is more attractive than somebody in the modern age. But I think overall we'll find that a beautiful person today is more beautiful than was. But at the time, I'm sure that was a very attractive creature, because somehow the population of humanity hasn't decreased that much over time, even though we've had a few setbacks along the way. So what we're saying is that this human development has been pretty good. I have no real complaints about how we've been developing our nature. It's been a little rough because we're filled with fear and we're filled with resistance. And there are forces that we have discovered in our world that seem to somehow possess other people and work against our perfection, our harmony, our sense of joy. So along comes this perfect thing, which enters into a world full of very imperfect things, which is, of course, not true. There is no imperfect and perfect. What we are is perfect for who we are in the moment we're in. What the Christ personality is perfect for what it is. When the two come to meet each other, that's when we realize we may want to increase our standards. Sorry, hang on one moment. I didn't mute my phone, of course. That's why I say you need tech. We need tech help here, damn it. Where are my techs? Doing jobs to try to pay for their rent. Yes, it's ever a struggle. So I'm just trying to figure out how to silence this beast. Now it says ring. I don't want it to say ring. Can't even silence the thing. All right. Sorry. So while I'm fooling with my tech, you're contemplating your personality, perfect for who you are. And what does that mean? How can it be perfect when we know we're full of frustration, anger, impatience, all the other things that go along that could go on the negative list? And while we've got a few that can go on the positive list, they're certainly not perfect, and they're easily pushed off the page by something remarkably disturbing. Well, it's because the consciousness that relates the heart to the head in us as a sphere of maturity cannot embrace a greater sphere of maturity at this moment. We have to do that. We have to do that ourselves. So we have to do that by increasing our capacity to register reality as it actually is. So let's take a look at how that's going to go. Even texts keep coming in. So to take this into perspective, today we're going to look at the personality of the universe, which is, by its nature, reflected in, reduced down to, and shown to the human race as the personality of the Christ consciousness, which is the personality of love in a synthesis of mind, emotion, and physical form. The very touch of the Christ personality is healing, the very touch. Remember the stories on his way to the cross, dragging that thing up the hill, and somebody reaches out and touches him and is healed. And he's moved to say something along the lines of, some grace has gone out of me. And that's exactly what happened. His effort of physical charge on his body when we're doing something really remember, they just beat the crap out of him. And now they've got him dragging this. I don't know how big a cross has to be before you're crucified on it, but it certainly isn't a stick anymore. So he's going through all this exertion in some form or another, and his whole system is charged with what he's thinking, what he's feeling, and the physical exertion of his body. And even that is so loving, so completely and absolutely loving with no trace of anything that isn't. Not angry, he's not pissed off, he's not grumbling. He's expressing love. So that the very touch of someone on him draws into themselves this tremendous healing power. So the personality of this being is obviously functioning at a higher level than the average human personality, based on our experience and what we've been able to accomplish with it. So now let's take a look at where does that Christ consciousness personality come from? If we take on the personality of the Christ and surrender our own limitations to accept the greater good, if we could do that, I believe we can do that. And I believe that the whole point of Saul on the road to Damascus is the experience demonstrating how that's possible. Because here's a guy on his way to do the wrong thing with all these thoughts and feelings churning around in his head that creates such a tension and a crisis in himself that he breaks through because his spirit in him is really striving to do the right thing. Now, we can think someone doing the wrong thing has no good in them. A lot of Christian people would have said Saul on the road to Damascus is evil. They would say Putin is evil, Xi is evil. That little North Korean shit that causes so much trouble is evil. But here we had someone who is demonstrating something remarkably evil, turning in Christians, brand new minted Christians, so that they can be stoned to death or imprisoned by the Romans. And yet he's struggling with it because it doesn't feel right. Something's wrong because down in himself, way down in himself, he has already got a commitment to God. And he's feeling somehow, this isn't working. This isn't feeling good. So he breaks through, and then this is described by those who look at the spiritual anatomy of human beings as a relationship between the pituitary gland, which is a reflection of the personality in the body, administering hormones and things to the body, and the the pineal gland, which is a location in the body of spiritual content. And these two are located in the brain quite close to each other. And if they both start vibrating with this energy of, this is something I want over here with this pituitary, and this is something over here in the pineal that's causing me grief, and the two kind of go boom, then you might have this light in the head go off and the remarkable experience that he came, and this voice that cracks through the boundaries of telepathy and says, why are you persecuting me? Which is a logical question because he wasn't really thinking to persecute Christ consciousness or God. He's thinking to persecute people who are acting against that, which is what his religious teachers told him. This is the old school story, and this is something here, and this something new thing is wrong, so the old school thing has to stamp it out, and you're going to help us. So all of this kind of stuff, which may or may not be a true story in my telling of the tale, I'm just making the point for you to look inside yourself and see how these things live in you, because there's no other truth to you except what's in you. Truth in me really isn't truth in you until we agree on something. So you have to look within yourself and see it and find it, not intellectually evaluate it and say, oh, that makes more sense than 2 and 2 is 6. So I'll take that. But it could be 2 and 2 is 5, and that doesn't make sense either. We have to find it in ourselves, and we have to put it in relationship to truth itself, which is also in there somewhere, because Christ consciousness is in there somewhere. Love is in there somewhere. So if we put ourselves in relationship to love, we'll get a vibration back. And it will say, Yeah, okay, that seems right. Or we'll get something in us that says, no, I don't like that. And when we can question that voice, and we should, but it's ours at least. It's inside the I, capital I, of our nature. So we can trust that it's coming from some source. Now, why we're out of sync with it might not have anything to do with anything inside the I. It might have to do with an influence upon our mind, which is not who we are. It's just something we possess in the world, or our feelings, which is something we possess in the world. So it might be something that we have taken on, identified with, and said, oh, that's my idea. I like that idea. So, but it doesn't make it a source idea. It makes it an outside idea we're temporarily having a romance with. And opinions change as we realize our romance was misplaced. That wasn't love at all. That was something else that I fell for. So we're looking at this triple relationship of how the personality of the universe, which is created by life. Life comes into the universe, and by its action on the universe, a harmony begins to assume itself out of the chaos. And this harmony comes from a mental, emotional, and physical, not to mention all the spiritual levels, idea of something life is producing over a long time. And when we look at the order of the universe, we realize there's a lot of harmony already going on. If you wanted a completely chaotic universe, it's a little late. You arrived a little late for this one. Maybe the next one will start out chaotic. But maybe the chaos was begun to be tamed many universes ago. We don't know for sure because we're not or we don't even have a real good guess, to be honest with it. But here we are now, and there's a lot of harmony going on in the universe. And when we look at the Christ consciousness with its perfect personality, which is a personality coming down to earth. Think about this. It's coming down to earth in human beings. It's already demonstrated perfectly in one human being, and we don't know a lot about, unless we're Buddhists, we don't know a lot about the Buddhist personality, but we certainly know that by the compassion and nature of the Buddha, Sattva, that was also a loving and perfect personality. It's just another one. And because our circle of friends is relatively limited, we don't know what other perfect personalities who are in total harmony with Christ consciousness and that personality, we don't know how many of those walk the earth with us. Now, in my personal experience of relationship, I would say a number who you would not be able to distinguish the difference between their personality and the personality of the Christ in terms of qualities of character. They're really that aligned because they have measured these things that we're talking about and made decisions and commitments in themselves that bring them into harmony with that and release the disharmony in themselves to it, which has to happen if you're going to take on the personality of the Christ consciousness. You're going to have to make some alterations in your own, like Paul did and like the other disciples did. When Jesus was collecting them along the way, they were just folk, fishermen, tax collector. Hardly any tax collectors have been considered to have what we would think of as great personalities because they're busy collecting people's money. And in those days, it was a little bit forceful. How many goats you got? 7. Good. I'll take 3. For the Romans, and 1 for myself. So this was kind of tax collecting back in the day. So not that they've changed much, but so we can't get too far off into tax collecting, can we? So what I'm saying here about the Christ personality is, where does it come from? It's a replica, in my opinion, of how this works. It's a shadow upon the human world of the personality of the universe through the Christ consciousness. Now, that's an interesting thought, but not necessarily a true one. So we just let it vibrate in us. But we have these opinions of the personality that walked around on the planet as the Christ personality, saying God is love. Okay, that's a clue. He who's seen the Father, which now when we talk about the personality of the universe, we're really, and we're talking about the personality of the whole universe, then we're talking about the personality of God. Because you see, outside the universe, where source is of some kind, life exists completely outside the universe, creating it. What state it's in, we don't know. How it's doing it, we don't know. But it's streaming in and manifesting in the universe. And in that manifestation, it has a nature. That nature managing the universe in relationship to life itself would be God in the universe, everywhere. God outside the universe, creating it, God transcendent, as the Buddha would have it, and God everywhere in the universe, God eminent, the Christ being. Not only everywhere in the universe, but in the human race as itself, not just an influence on the human race, which we've had up to now. We've had the influence of this Christ being, this love universe, on ourselves from the very beginning. But we haven't been able to encapsulate it in our personality in a pure way. We've been a little rough back in the days of the Visigoths and Genghis Khan and these pre-modern, positive-natured folk, like we're trying to pretend that we are. But I'm a person who's been at war, and I know how thin that veneer can be when you're up against an implacable enemy. So we have to recognize that these things exist. And inside you, inside me, inside all of us, is where they exist, which means that there's some vast reality inside of us, inside each person. If we go in there and look around and we discover this seems impossible, but the room inside of us is way bigger than the room outside of us, because it opens up into all these dimensions, leading upward to pure spirit itself, which would be the spirit of love. Now, it's a discussion which we'll have at some point. Our purpose is not to make a university of how things work. You can go study esoteric books by different people who have written them around through the centuries, the Buddha, Shankaracharya. In our West, we have esoteric groups like Rosicrucians. The Masons didn't write much for the public, which I kind of find surprising, but maybe it was just the way it's supposed to be. But and the Rosicrucians didn't do much either, because they're talking about the essential inner Christ spirit of Christianity in the Rosicrucians. and the different stages and levels leading to this perfection we're talking about. But they don't put out much in the way of explanation about it. If you're part of the organization, then you get to go to the classes and go through the initiations and things. Now, a bunch of knowledge was dumped out into the public by the Theosophical Society and Mabel Collins and a lot of people that the list is really long and that don't seem to have any affinity to each other, but they're all just expressing the inner conversation that was pretty much secret for a long time because people weren't ready to talk about it without screwing it up. Then it's about the beginning of the last century, it started being dumped out into the public. And now you've got Mabel Collins' work and you've got others. And so without rating them or valuing them or trying to make anything better or worse than another, because whether it's St. Francis of Assisi writing something or other Augustine or other people speaking from that spiritual context to the world, then there's just been tens of thousands. And even go back to the Greeks, they were talking about their version of things. But through the Christian era, we've had a remarkable amount of things come out, and more coming all the time. Some of it junk, some of it ego-centered clickbait to get attention, but some of it inspired by love to help humans become more loving. And that's the foundation of what we're striving to do, which is to create a workshop which will allow people to get their grip on what they need to do within themselves, within their personality type, to empower it with love out of the inner connection to it, not to some being. We're not selling Jesus tickets. We're not looking for any great personalities. We're talking about a direct connection to love itself as it is in us and in the universe, creating the Christ consciousness and thereby the Christ personality out of the personality of the universe, out of a response to life itself from somewhere totally way beyond our pay grade. You see, that direct connection to your heart and to your mind for the love wisdom, dual love wisdom energy, is where we are. That's where humanity is at knocking on the door of. Now, what good will it do us if someone opens that door if we don't know how to step through it and apply ourselves to it? And you're going to have to do that not in your intellect. Intellect serves that process, that project. If you say to me, I want to be inspired to build a great cathedral, then you've got to look into the spiritual world of how a great cathedral would take shape if love were the architect. Then we have to employ the intellect to get the materials to build it. And it's only been in the last, couple thousand years that the architecture of great cathedrals with their Gothic arch could replace the older style, Roman style of just piling up stones in a way that they rest on each other. So advancements come from within, from the inspiration of inspired architects, inspired artists like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, artists that see beyond the flat into the multidimensional and try by their best to paint it into their art. And in some way, even though it's still just a picture, it has an energy that comes out of it in a way that hundreds of years later, we still are inspired by it. And even when it's a little bit whacked, like Van Gogh's art, it's got an energy in it that tells you this guy was really trying to do something in himself that hadn't been done before with a paintbrush, which I think is pretty amazing when you think. I can understand trying to do something with a pen because you're talking to the mind, talking to the spirit. But painting it into a painting so that it talks to the mind and talks to the heart and talks to the spirit, that's really a remarkable thing to me. I've painted enough bad paintings to know. So look at the idea of this so that we can have a conversation as we go along. If we don't build a foundation of positive recognition of things in ourselves by looking at some of these ideas, the only reason to look at an idea is not to develop some intellectual information. It's to decide how you feel about it. Do you have a psychic positive response to it? If you do, go in the direction and find out more about it. The inner sense that you have of rightness, of connection to the source, is a trustworthy mechanism when we get the personality filters of for and against out of our way. If the greatest artist is black and you have a filter of hostility or hatred towards that race, how are you going to be impacted by that art? How is that art ever going to awaken you until you drop your filter and let yourself be contacted with it and then go, oh my God, something that beautiful could not come from somebody who didn't have love as their nature. So I've been wrong about putting that filter there. Or anyone else. You could be, we're capable of being mad at ourselves. So why not anybody else? And when you've got 2 or 3 races blending in you, then the complication gets even greater because you can't be at war with yourself. You have to find the beauty and the love and the harmony in every culture in the world and realize they're all just being hidden and covered by filters that we have put into ourselves, filters that the Christ consciousness does not possess, and the filters that the universal personality consciousness through the whole starry skies does not possess. It's harmonizing all things to itself because all things are a creation of it. There's nothing left out. So open it up. Open up the breathing in yourself and realize I don't need any filters because in the end, the source of the universe is love, life through love, building a universe. And as a part of the universe, I'm an expression of that life through love. And so is everything else. If it doesn't know it, then I need to encourage it to know it. And if I don't know it, I need to encourage myself to see it, to feel it, to touch it. Then I can transmit love to myself through the personality of Christ consciousness, love consciousness, mental, emotional, and physical, through angelic consciousness that's in harmony with all of that, and through me out to the world, awakening that in them. Because it cannot be in me if it cannot be in anyone else. Now, they can be unconscious of it. They can be resisting it. They can be resenting it, denying it. But that doesn't mean it's not there. It's there. Now the question is, how do we awaken it, stimulate it, strengthen it in ourselves and in others so that this shining power of truth can come through? Because in this long story of turning chaos into an expression of love in the universe and harmony, which is the will of it all is harmony. And if you look at the universe above you, the sky stays balanced and harmonious to itself tremendously. And what isn't, if there is any that isn't, is being pulled into that harmony moment to moment in a stronger and stronger tide of love. So if we don't put ourselves in harmony with that source that created the personality of the consciousness of love, then how is that personality going to become our consciousness, and how are we going to be empowered by it? It's logical. Doesn't mean what I'm saying is true, but you have to put it inside of yourself and feel that so that you can think about commitments to it, because it's upon your commitments that life and nature and Mother Nature and the greater nature of beings are going to respond to you, to your commitment to share what they share. Likes attract and support other likes. Now, if we should think that that's true, then we just simply align that. Write it down, paint it, make it a picture, make it some picture in yourself, figure it out. We can do all that. That's part of what a workshop is for. Only if you're in agreement to it, with it. Then we set our experiment to produce a result that proves it to us, because this all must become knowing. That's what the whole Aquarian age is. It's an age of knowing, not an age of believing, which is what the age of Pisces has been. Belief becomes knowing the moment that the experience proves it. Is that logical? You can believe it's raining outside. Well, I think it's raining outside, but it could be something different. So you walk out the front door and look up. Your belief that it's raining just disappeared. Just like that. And what appears in its place is knowing, and a face full of rain, or no rain. See, it doesn't matter whether it's raining or not raining. The belief is still gone, and knowing is still present. But now you know it's not raining. Now you know it is raining. Or it's somewhere in between. It's misting slightly. Or as dry as a bone. But knowing has replaced belief. So it's convenient that the Aquarian age, and I don't know why Aquarius founds knowing, but it's a sort of a talent that it seems to have as a astrological, constellational, intelligent being of a number of stars and cooperating intelligences, I guess. I don't know why it does that, but it seems to have that effect. So it's convenient that it follows after an age where idealism and belief are sponsored, because those are steps towards knowing. And once we reach the platform of knowing, boy, can we take some serious committed action. And then the power of a human being, which lies in us when our will suddenly knows what the hell it's doing. Just give anybody a knowing of what they're doing and turn them loose. They get a lot done. Even if they're doing something stupid, they get a lot done. Believe me, I have rushed off in directions with absolute knowing what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, but it was the wrong thing to be doing. So, that's it. We have to just take action on our knowing about love. And as long as that some part of nature can keep that from becoming knowing, from your personality knowing the personality of love and realizing you can have that for your own. And if you do, you have the power of love. You have transformation. You have transmutation. You have grace. These are qualities of love that love is perfectly willing to give you or give me. And love in your mind produces wisdom. Love in your heart produces this tremendous union with all other things that have hearts, and everything has a heart. And they all feed from one heart. And if that heart is animated by love, then it clears your path to it. So all of this can come about if we slow down, take a look, and decide that this is worth doing. I believe it's worth doing, and I believe it's far easier to do than anybody thinks, because they've never really tried. And I don't mean that negatively, because some people just have prayed on their knees for decades, around and around, the whole church on their knees. If you go to Tibet, to Mount Kailash, you'll see people going around Mount Kailash, which is a big damned hill, going around Mount Kailash on their knees. They stand up, they bow, they take a step forward, they go back to their knees and they prostrate. They get back up, they take a step forward, they bow, they prostrate, they go, oh, it's just like holy mackerel. And it takes a long time to go a mile that way. This is what people do who have a deep need and desire to connect with the source of things. So I'm not saying that anybody's not sincere, but if you go about things in the right order of implementing thought and feeling and action, you can speed this entire process up enormously and develop your consciousness in a way that it can embrace the Christ personality as in place of your own personality, not to replace you, but to purify and augment you into a reflection of that as your individuality, as your I. So putting a few elements together and acting on it without having to circle Mount Kailash or go 10 times around the church or whatever it is that people put themselves through these rigorous demonstrations. We don't have to wear a hair shirt. We can just simply apply. Apply. And when it brings up something in you that resists that application, then we get to work on it. Now we have now we know what to do. And the closer you get to clearing away some of these rather unattractive filters that we put in us, like hostility or hatred towards some thing or person because of some thing or person's demonstrating image, the sooner we burn that stuff out of ourselves, the sooner love can come through and start healing that person, start helping that person become the person they always hoped they would be. So take a look at this human personality. See, there is no animal personality. Animals have these really strange personalities, but they've picked it up from us, basically, because they're not self-conscious and aware. They're not thinking, I'm going to act just like my master. They just do. They just do things because their responses condition them for it. So we are different. We're the first step up this endless ladder of consciousness towards perfect love, where we have an I, capital I, that can say, I am that. Not completely yet, because we demonstrate that we're not that a lot by doing things that show us, oh, wait a minute, I thought I was that, and here I just kicked that cat out of my way. Maybe I need something to learn about animals and being loving towards them. So that's it. You got to bear that in yourself, because we're loaded with that kind of junk. Oh, it's a spider, step on it. It's a snake, kill it. What the hell are we thinking? It's a planet we live on with these things, but we no more own it than they do. If we apply love to the animal kingdom, then we could be stewards of this planet, good stewards of love. But if we just go, let's exterminate all of the mosquitoes. Well, okay, I don't want too many more mosquitoes. But we have to stop and think about what love's about and recognize and reconcile our intentions to love's intentions, not being obedient to it. Because all of this, and we reiterate this almost every single time we talk about it, about podcasts and put love out there, is that all of this is relevant to free will, human free will. Now, Christ free will, or the cosmic free will in the personality of the cosmos, we don't know yet. We can't act on that because we don't know it. But we do know we have free will. And we can only assume, and this is an assumption, that the Christ has free will because it chose to enter humankind as a human being. Now, maybe later we'll realize it was told to and didn't have any choice. Go do that. I don't want to do that. Go do it anyway. I don't know. I wasn't there where that conversation was being held. But if in compassion for human race, the Christ being itself was moved to enter and serve it with love, I could believe that because I have been moved to help other things in my life by compassion. I've also been moved to harm other things in my life. So I know I could go either way with this free will thing, but my choice, my overriding choice from having tragically gone in both directions with war and all those issues, is to choose love and make it work, because I have faith that in the power of love and the absolute power that comes from it, from within us, when we align with it, my free will can be satisfied to act that way. And having developed free will, I have no intention of throwing it away. I have no intention of being a servant of some unseen God. I do have an intention of aligning myself with those beings that I believe are serving the same good that I care to serve. That's all I know at this point. And I think that's important. It's the free will of a human being that is the secret of our success, the secret of our difficulty, and eventually a demonstration by us of something utterly remarkable, which is will and intelligence and love fused in a personality governed by its free will, so thoroughly fused with love that there is no possibility of us acting against love. No possibility of it at all. Because love has so much power in it that nothing can stand in its way of loving, not its way of force or its way of destruction, but its way of loving. Now, we don't know what that means because we aren't there yet. But if we apply ourselves to it diligently with some confidence in ourselves, a spirit of adventure with our free will, and a desire to know more about a universe in which we find ourselves with beings such as living love, consciousness, then life can be a wonderful adventure for the human race to stride forward with, because we've reached a place where we can do it, where we can face ourselves, face within ourselves to our source, and reconcile the two together and make love the champion of our endeavors. Let's have a whack at it and see if we can make it something good. Thanks. Appreciate your time and energy, and we'll come back at this again.
Don't you wanna know about love? Wanna know know?